My name's Alaric. I'm bringing you this interview on behalf of maturegaming.com with Steve Gibson, the Vice President of Gearbox Software. In case you couldn't tell by the title of this video, this is all about Borderlands 2, and Mr. Gibson was kind enough to grant me an audience and answer a few of my questions, so yeah, that's fantastic. I want to point out a couple of things about this interview before we get into it. First of all, I was recording on an Android phone. I was recording on an Android phone because my recorder was busted. Broken. Fucked. Very annoying, very irritating, but there we are, that's the simple fact of it. Second of all, we were in a bar, a crowded bar. There was a lot of noise, it was ambient. I managed to use my sound editing software and get it down to a minimal level without dicking around too much with my voice and Mr. Gibson's voice. So, yeah, there is that. If you want to read the full article on this interview, then you will find it at maturegaming.com. I've got the link in the description. I hope you have a pleasant day and enjoy this interview. I've added some screenshots and some video game footage as well, courtesy of Gearbox Software and 2K Gaming. Enjoy. Okay, so we got a nice little IP going here with the Borderlands franchise now. So we've got the sequel,
yep,
which we expected. I gather that when it was released, there was some sort of skepticism as to how well it could do against the other titles that were out at the time, because Dragon Age was around at the time, and there was there was a lot of competition, and it did a hell of a lot better than you expected it to do. That, bearing that in mind, what direction do you think the development team wanted to take it in now that you have this success on your hands?
Well, I think that it's a little misleading to think like that Borderlands was just a giant out the gate success. You know, like it did reasonably well, but what happened was that it kept doing well. Is what was the difference was. Like, yes, the numbers are out there saying 5-6 million units sold, but that wasn't like we did that in the first 3 months. We did more in the following year than we did in our opening year.
Yeah,
that really actually influenced how Borderlands 2 developed too. Oftentimes, when you decide you're going to do a game, you set up a budget, right, and you set up a timeline, and you invariably those things move as we are in the industry.
Sure. Yes.
But what usually happens is, the reality is set in, like, oh man, we're not going to finish that in time, or oh man, that's going to cost us too much money to do that, so we're going to do this instead. But what happened is, as we're developing Borderlands 2, Borderlands 1 keeps doing this, and we had the actual, the opposite effect of what's the standard for gaming, creating games. We actually got to look at the thing and say, man, this thing's even bigger than we realized or hoped for. We actually invested more. We actually put more people on and put more money in, because we were like, man, this is something that's actually doing even better than we'd hoped. So we had a bizarre scenario of growing our stuff in the middle of it, actually getting bigger and crazier. It's a giant game now. We're talking double the playthrough length kind of stuff.
Okay, so I mean, is it fair to say that with the sequel you've got everything you could possibly have wanted into the sequel now, or do you think
of all the major goals? Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's always little things like, oh man, I wish this guy's animation did this thing or something, but like of all the major goals, it feels like we've really put a lot of them in there that we were really hoping to. So I think a lot of guys are really proud of what we're putting out. A lot of the first Borderlands was it really was like a 1.0. Like, it felt like, man, those guys got that, but they could have put more things into this, like the small things of like quest lines not lining up right. Like, oh, I wish they could do that. Well, now we do that, and like the little nitpicks here and there, we really wish we could have done. So we got to tend to all of that laundry list of those things too, in addition to the giant craziness that is Borderlands 2,
I noticed you got a story going this time round as well. I mean, yes, it is. I mean, the original sort of set you up with, go and find the vault, and you went and found the vault. And this one, you've got the original characters who actually have spoken dialogue between each other now, and there's a lot more sort of uniqueness about them, and there's a lot more exploration of these people.
Yeah.
Can we expect to see this, sustained throughout? Is there sort of an ongoing narrative that develops and changes, and can we expect there to be sort of little twists and turns?
We sure hope that people enjoy the story. What we did was, I mean, for me to just say, hey, the story's better, like, whatever. But what I can promise you is that we've built the system to be able to tell a better story. What was an obstacle for Borderlands was the mission system, actually, was always, you get a mission, you go to one place, you grab something, and you bring it back, right? And there was always check-in, back and forth. And the story's not really told that way. The story's kind of told progressively, you know? So what happens in Borderlands 2 is that it's able to just keep progressing and winding and changing. You don't have to always run back and you're like, okay, I fetched the 4, dust balls, now what? So, yeah, the story's a much harder. If you're looking for a number, there's about 7 times more dialogue. Wow, it's big.
Yeah, that's big.
So, but you can skip through all of it, by the way.
Oh, well. Okay, and the amount of guns I've noticed, there's definite changes there in the kinds of, not just the aesthetics, but the way these things perform. There's just all this stuff. How much work was done to randomize guns to the extent that they were randomized in the original Borderlands compared to this one?
That was, that's an all-new system, actually.
Really?
We gutted the whole gun system. We loved it. But when you're trying to do a bigger game and every little bit of memory matters and all these things, like it's entirely new. The last one, we actually got a certificate from Guinness giving us the world record for number of guns in a game. So that was cool. We're pretty sure we're going to break it with this one. And we think that what we accomplished on like number of guns in Borderlands and like how different they were was more along the lines of just the effects they had and how much damage and spread and things, but the visual diversity wasn't as strong as we'd hoped. So we're hoping to deliver on that side as well this time.
Okay. Did we actually have a number of a fixed number of guns that are in this for the Guinness Book of World Records? Do we have a real attributable number?
One, I believe they counted 17.5 million.
Wow.
So we don't know what the count is for this one yet. We look forward to their count.
How would you find out? I mean, do you just have a system of permutations where everything shows up online as people discover it? Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, they'll deconstruct it and figure it all out, and we wish them luck.
Okay, and in terms of, I mean, you said that the project started with certain constraints, and then as time went on, it was expanded.
Yeah.
With budget and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
As the team, presumably, I assume the team increased. The team got bigger as time went on to accommodate the size of the project.
Yeah.
Does that mean that your writing team had to accommodate for a bigger story, or was there a fixed point in mind for the story, as in we're going to tell this story and this is how it will play out?
You're talking. We had added content and features. The story was set like for a good while, and how it was told was set. When we started adding things, we were adding like environments and side missions. Like the set plot line was like, hey, we were happy with where it was, so we didn't like, wait a second, let's add a second act. That didn't change. But there's lots more of like things like Tiny Tina chain there. Like that's not actually a critical path. That's just some crazy lady with her tea party, She does, however, play a part in the main critical path of the thing. The mission you skipped was you're trying to, detonate a train, right? That's actually part of the main storyline that you skip through.
Yeah.
But we added all kinds of other crazy things into it. We wanted to do a couple of things. One, we didn't want to assume anybody played the first Borderlands. That's a big goal that I feel like can be a mistake, is if you just assume like, well, these guys already know this character or they know this mechanic, so we did that. But the second thing is we wanted to think of it as like presenting this as gaming can even be as a hobby game. Like you can just keep playing it and trying it and doing different things. The whole badass rank system is a part of that. Like imagining people are going to play through different characters and wanting to affect that. So that's how we look at it.
And the online component that you have, does it go beyond co-op this time? Do we sort of go into more PvP styles of play that then need just the standard sort of dueling system we saw in the first one?
We looked really closely at that, and people didn't pursue the PvP stuff at all. We actually, in the first game, we had arenas, and we had to reset everybody into different loadouts, and everybody really just gravitated towards the co-op stuff. So we reinvested in the co-op systems instead. We still actually have the PvP stuff where you can turn anything in the world, and you can now duel for gear, and we added a couple things there. But the arena stuff, nobody seemed to really gravitate towards nearly as much as, hey, can you fix the mission system so I play with my friends, or can you add drop-in split screen, so those kind of cool stuff. So that's where we threw the engineers at for that kind of stuff.
Okay. Yeah. And in terms of split screen, do we have more than 2 people per machine now? Do we have? Can we have 2, or is it just 2? Just 2. Okay.
Yeah.
Classical. Fine.
Yeah.
And I know it's very early in the day to be talking about downloadable content, but is there a path in mind there of where we're going to go?
We are, the way we did it last time was once we hit certification, that's when you submit to Microsoft and Sony for like, hey, does this thing meet all of your standards of when you hit this button, does it take you to the dashboard properly and that stuff? And is it bug-free? Once you do that certification submission, that's when we start looking at and thinking about it. We have one DLC we've already committed to, which is the Necromancer. So we're about to start really digging into that. What we do beyond that, I think that's questions we're just now starting to think about and ask. Certification is happening in the next week or 2.